The last step to the hat is the pom-pom. So for this, you're gonna need a fork, some scissors, and later on, the hook. You can put that hook aside for now. You don't need that until you're done making the pom-pom. Grab that second color of yarn and cut about a foot worth of that yarn and then set it aside. We're gonna use that later to attach the pom-pom to the hat. Now we need the fork. Since we're making a teeny tiny pom-pom, this fork is going to be our handy dandy tool to make such a small pom-pom. So grab your yarn and you're gonna wrap the yarn around diagonally your fork so that it drapes over the second to the top prong like this. Then you're gonna wrap it under the third prong and then up, bring it up over the top prong. And now you're just gonna wrap this yarn around the fork about 15 times. Now I'm going to cut while I'm holding on really tightly to the fork. I'm going to now cut the yarn. I'm not going to let go yet. I need to now use that yarn that I had set aside, and I'm going to thread it through the middle of the fork, close to the base of the fork. So now what we want to do is try to make the two ends of this yarn about even. And we're going to take the other end of the yarn and bring it through the middle of the fork above this wad of yarn that we wrapped around the fork. We're going to tie these two yarn tails together really, really tight. So I would advise doing one knot, tying it as tight as you can, and then slipping the yarn off of the fork. Put the fork away, you don't need that anymore. And then giving it these two yarn tails, one last tug to make sure it's even tighter. Then I would recommend doing a second knot to make sure it's super secure. Okay, now to turn this into a pom-pom, we need to cut open all the loops on either side of that middle section that got tied together. So you're just gonna stick your scissor in those loops and cut them open. Okay, so now it looks like a messy pom-pom. We're gonna trim it into a sphere, a super teeny tiny sphere. Make it as small or as big as you want. I think the smaller that you make it, the more fuzzy it will look. You just wanna make it look proportional to your hat. So be really careful that you don't accidentally cut off the yarn tails that you use to tie all this yarn together as you do this step. So I'm literally just gonna rotate this floof of yarn around as I try to cut in circles at all different angles. And I'm gonna keep going until I feel like I have a pretty good looking sphere of a pom-pom. All right, I'm gonna say I'm pretty happy with how this pom-pom looks. I'll massage it a little bit, see if I can make that line in the middle disappear a bit more. But that's okay. Looks pretty good to me. Last step is to attach the pom-pom to the hat. So this is where we're gonna need the hook. Again, if you have a tapestry needle, you could use that instead, might be a little bit easier. What we're gonna do is pull each of the yarn tails through the top of the hat. But we're not gonna pull them through exactly the same spot because we want to tie both ends together on the inside of the hat to secure it. So I'm gonna stick my hook into the party hat from the bottom up and try to find a spot that's as close to the top as possible. Then I'm gonna grab one of the yarn tails and pull it through. And notice how I always have to give some tension to the yarn so that the hook can grab the yarn and pull through. Okie doke. Now I'm gonna repeat that, but now I'm gonna stick my hook out a hole that is different from the one it just went through, but still close. So let's say here, the very top of my hat. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to essentially yarn over and then bring that yarn down in the middle of my hat. And here's how you can see, this is why it will stay on your hat, like so. Now I'm going to take the 2 yarn tails, I'm going to tie a knot with them, and I'm going to, if it doesn't naturally hit the bottom as you're tying the knot, you can always flip your party hat a little bit inside out just to make sure you really get to the bottom of things here. I'm going to do a double knot just to make it super secure as well. And then I'm going to turn my party hat again right side facing out. And we are going to just cut the yarn tails again so that they'll get hidden inside the party hat. Ta-da! Here is your teeny tiny party hat.